A sizzling temperature and a performance to match. That was the story of Accrington Stanley as the Stags continued their unbeaten start to move up into the automatics. But can it continue ahead of the trip to Colchester United? The longer the run goes on, the more the temptation of complacency will have. With players slowly coming back from injury though, Clough will be sure to keep that monster at bay and focus on the job at hand. Tonight on the Mansfield Matters podcast, we'll gush over 3 tremendous goals and 3 welcome points. We'll have an eye on the future following yesterday's Central League Cup fixture. We'll preview Saturday's trip to Colchester and try to answer the big question. Can the Stags' unbeaten run continue? And if it doesn't, has this squad got what it takes to keep a foothold on the automatic promotion dream? All of that, and as ever, your comments, questions and opinions in the live feed on the show for the fans, by the fans. Why? Because Mansfield matters. Usually in a heat wave, all people can find a little bit of shade. But Mansfield Town did superbly well in battling through that heat wave to bring home all 3 points on Saturday afternoon away at Accrington Stanley. Who are they? Well, let's find out who they are. And by they, I mean people who are joining me on the Mansfield Matters podcast tonight. Christ, that link was terrible. Let's say hello and good evening to Mr. Alan Wilson.
Good evening, Craig. Good evening, everybody.
Let's say hello and good evening to the man who turned up as the jingle was playing. It's Mr. Cam Felton. Good evening.
Good evening.
And let's say hello and good evening to a man whose garage has been redone. He's got his shirts almost ready to go. He is halfway there. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Nick of Mansfield Town Shirts fame.
Hi, Craig. I'm halfway there. We're halfway there. Just need the shirts back. Bit of paint and we're nearly there.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you know, we've podcasted in darker, worse places. At least you've made it to the show. I mean, Nathan right now is bottle feeding, but personally, he could have held the baby in one hand, had the bottle under his arm, and held a camera in the other hand. He could have been here, but he's not. And then, you know, Clive, there's technology on trains now. Could have been here as well, but where is it? He's not here. But you've made it here, and that is the most important thing. How is life in Shirtland? What's the collection up to now since we last saw you?
Well, it's currently in storage at the minute because it's not here. So every so often I do make the trek to just hand another one to me parents and go, here goes another one. 145, but again, that does include some replicas that I'm slowly sort of weaning out. But there's some kids ones in there that I'll keep in mind. But yeah, I'm 140. I've had quite a few recently, just randomers that turn up now. I have just negotiated with Martin McIntosh for one of his. Oh, so there you go. There's a name from the past.
Well, the past, yeah.
From the relegation season. So yeah, there's some more coming. But hopefully when we decorate it, they'll all look nice and neat and on display, hopefully.
I look forward to seeing the Mansfield Town Shirts Museum. Alan, let's delve straight into Saturday afternoon. It was absolutely blistering heat, which in any other circumstance, you'd expect a slow-paced game and an afternoon where not much happened. But as it was, Mansfield Town managed 3 sizzling goals and 3 sizzling points.
I think it looked quite slow to start with, to be fair. First 10, 15 minutes where they're getting to grips with each side was cancelling each other out, if that makes sense. But once Stags got a foothold, and after the super goal from DKD, the first one, I agree with what George Maris said in his interview. There was only one winner. They played some really, really good football.
Cam, it would be an afternoon where the likes of me and you definitely would hide. And had we had Stephen Quinn on the pitch, we would have been like playing with 10, considering the ginger thing. But forget factor 50. It was factor Mansfield, wasn't it?
It was. It was very impressive, and I'm not saying that we were all a bit negative going into it, because we weren't. But it was probably the game that we were most worried about. We don't beat Accrington. We know they're a very well drilled side, and they've not had a bad start to the season, and we made them look average, which is fantastic. If you can go on the road to any club and make them look average in front of their own fans on a day like that, then fair play to the team, because it was a fantastic performance and the goals were superb. Individual brilliance and then a fantastic team goal sandwiched in the middle. Fantastic all-round performance.
Well, one man certainly was on that. I don't want to say negative hype before the game, but more on the cautious side was Nick. You forgot to do your podcast predictions. We were stood outside the ground, and you managed to get it in before the deadline. And you were like, "What should I do? What should I do?" And remind everybody or tell everybody what you went with in the end.
2-2. That didn't go quite so well. And the week before, when we played Bradford, I had a draw, and then I changed it. Well, no, I didn't change it. I was going to put a draw and then change it for a Stags win, so I got it the wrong way around. But I went for 2-2. I a bit like Cam. I thought it's away at Accrington. We don't beat Accrington. Certainly don't beat them away. 1986, I think it was the last time they beat them away. So yeah, it just didn't happen. But then we turned up, and I say it was quite comfortable in the end. I mean, the best part of it was we had the only row in the shade at the end, which was a positive, of course. Which, you know, money can't buy that, can they? But yeah, I thought we were brilliant from sort of, Alan said, a bit of a slow start, but after that, as soon as we got that first goal, it felt different to Crewe. At Crewe, I always felt like something was going to happen. I didn't ever feel like they were going to score. And if they did, it was only going to be a consolation, because I thought we were excellent.
Yeah, we certainly were on the day. As ever, come and have your say on your team. Get involved in the comments now. Anything you want to say, whether it's around Accrington, around the League Cup, or whatever it is that you want to say. If it's Mansfield Town related, drop it in the comments. Paul in the comments says, "Oh my God, no Clive. How will we cope?" I think we'll all be fine for a week. We'll be fine for a week. Alan, you know, as Saturday afternoons go, as we say, to get 3 points at Accrington was great. And I think one of the most pleasing things, I know we'll sort of drool over the goals later on, but it was the fact that the team put in a professional performance and didn't let things like the weather and things like that take hold. You look at last season, almost a similar time of year when we played Leyton Orient away. Early season, really, really hot, really difficult conditions to play in, and we just didn't turn up. We didn't do what we needed to do, and it was those fine margins which cost us in the end. This year, it come rain or sunshine, I think it won't matter to Mansfield, because they will really, really just get their head down and do the job they need to do.
And the thing that impressed me most was Lewis. How long's he been out for? Is it 4 to 6 weeks or something like that? And he looked brand new, didn't he, when he came back? I know he was blowing out his proverbial when he'd finished, and it was admitted of that. But up until that point, I thought he was superb. You know, it looked as like he'd never been away. He just slotted straight back in, albeit, you know, with a different partner on the right-hand side with Barry instead of Johnson. But I think he performed admirably, like everybody did.
Moreover, for me, Cam, I was pleased to see him start in midfield. I was worried, and we discussed this previously, that if he came back in before Johnson was back fit, that Clough would do what Clough has done historically, which is drop Jordan Bowery and put more of a player that he suits there. But he didn't. He stuck him into midfield, into his natural position, and it definitely paid off.
It did, and point proven, you play players in their natural position and they perform better. It's just how things work, and Clough doesn't always see that, and it's frustrating. But yeah, like Alan said, it looked like he'd not been away. What a performance it was from him, not just for the goal, but to slot back in as if he'd not been away. It is fantastic, and a testament to him, like just getting back to fitness and obviously putting the hard work in on the training ground and being up to speed straight away. You look at some players in the past that we've had that have been out for similar lengths of time, and it's took him a game or two to get back into it, and it seems that he's got straight back in, and the performances there already. And it was a big loss when we didn't have him. I think a lot of I can't name a single player that we've got that I'd say is not a loss when we've not got them. You look at the players who got out injured, every single one of them could bring something to the team. So to get one back, and fingers crossed get more of them back in the next 2 to 3 weeks, is going to be quite an interesting situation for Clough and his team. Because I wouldn't say anybody deserves to be dropped, but are those that are coming back into the picture going to walk straight back into the team? Definitely not.
It's interesting with Lewis, Nick, because like Cam said, he did fit straight back into the side. But I also felt on the day that he brought the better out of the other midfielders in that team as well. You look at George Maris, got himself a goal, changed position, he moved from that right-hand side across to that left-hand side in that gap, which was occupied by Ollie Clark previously. Again, in the middle, Lewis Reed did his usual thing and played his usual game, but having Aaron Lewis back in the side, I think raised both his game and that of George Maris too.
I think it was the best our midfield had looked this season. I think I like Maris playing further forward. I think the more further back he goes, I think the less effective he is, and I think that showed with him sort of arriving late in the box for the goal. I think he does a lot better when he's playing further forward, but Reed just dropping back that little bit allows him to do that. Lewis is a bit of everything, isn't he? He's up, he's down, he's back, he's on one side, he's on the other side. I thought he was brilliant. I do think the commanding nature of Flint at the back allows the midfield to sort of push a little bit further forward, because they're not so worried that they're going to get a big long ball over the top and they've got to chase back, because Flint and Brunton, another word for him, I thought he was brilliant on the ball. Thought he was fantastic as well, and his sort of calm composure and ability to pick a good pass, I think, helped the midfield three. But I think with them and Keeler Dunn, I think that was the best we'd seen in midfield. I thought they linked together brilliantly, and one thing I did notice that other teams are normally good at and we're not so good at is that every time we had the ball, there were 2 or 3 options. Whereas sometimes we get a little bit too close together and everyone's a little bit compact in that middle because they're all sort of trying to share the same sort of space. But I thought, like you say, with Lewis brought a little bit different. I think every time it went back to the defenders, they had 4 or 5 options that, they could have gone right to Lewis, left to Maris. You had the fullbacks. Very rare did it go back to Pim, which normally Pim gets the ball more than most sometimes, but I don't think it very rarely went back to him. I thought we always had options, and I thought we looked the best we looked really in midfield.
Keep your comments coming in. Tim says Lewis is the game changer for us this season. The team steps it up another level when he is on. We're more vibrant and positive. He makes things happen. Interesting that you were talking about Lewis Brunt there, Nick, as well, because Thomas in the comments has said, went under the radar, but how good is Lewis Brunt? Was worried about his slender build in League 2, especially as their big number 9 targeted him, but love how he jumps early to counteract his size. His ability on the ball is a level above 2. Looks like a top signing. And I would have to agree with that, Cam. Other than that first 45 minutes, his first 45 minutes as well at Sheffield Wednesday, he has slotted right in there. And to be honest, even now Bailey Cargill is pretty much match fit and ready to go, I think he'll struggle to shift him because he, Brunt that is, and Aidan Flint have started to create a nice little partnership back there.
They have, and I suppose that's a positive on Brunt, but a massive positive on Flint. No doubt he'll have done as much as he can to sort of like build this relationship and build this trust, and that's what you get with an experienced player. And you see it all the time, whether it's Mansfield or not. You see a younger centre back with a more experienced centre back, and they learn. And you look, for example, under Dave, when Ryan Sweeney came in and he's partnered alongside someone like Christian Pearce, it worked so well, and both players learned first and foremost how to sort of like play with each other, but have that trust and that bond that worked so well. And it's great that we've got a partnership, because in previous seasons we've been guilty of being weak at the back. Point proven last season, we leaked so many goals, it cost us a place in the playoffs. And Clough identified that, and all right, Brunt came in because of Kilgore and Johnson going out injured, but he's definitely earned his place in the side. And now it's just like you said, with the 45 minutes Chef Wednesday, you could tell it was just nerves, but we know that we've now got a very competent and good player at League Two standard.
And he gives us options pitch as well, doesn't he, Alan? The fact that he can play in midfield. I like the fact that he's comfortable on the ball. He can move it and play the ball on the deck, and really has suited our style. It reminds me a little bit of a defensive Ryan Sturck. He can spot a pass, can Lewis Brunton. I really like that he gives us a little bit of balance on that left-hand side.
I don't think it's by chance either, him coming from Leicester, because they play the same sort of game. And I've got a friend who's a big fan of Leicester, and he said he saw him both times when he played in the Premier League, and he said he didn't look out of place at all. He says he can, same as you just said, he can spot a pass. He was very good on the ball. He can head it, He's the all-round player, really, to be fair. And he probably slots in better at the side of Flynn than, maybe some of the others who played the wrong side, maybe, like Barry did or whatever, because Flynn went to the other side when Barry played with him. But now they seem to be, ideal together. It's symmetric, it's nice, and it's looking good.
Yeah, and having that right pairing, Nick, is just as important as having a front two that play well together, having people who can play in the right position, because right side centre-back and left side centre-back, it is a completely different game. And when you start getting your wires crossed, that's where you do start to get in trouble. Even though it's the similar position on the pitch, it's all about body angles, body shape, and how you play out.
Yeah, and things like going for the same ball. How many times have we seen defenders working together and they both end up going for the same ball? I think it'll help that they're two completely different type of defenders. You're not going to get Brunt going for the same ball that Flint's going to go for example, and Flint's not going to be, dropping back and chasing the pace that Brunt does. So I think they work really well together, actually. Like somebody mentioned in the comments, he probably should do as a Premier League or ex-Premier League player, but there's no guarantee that they're going to be the slot in at League Two and start playing as he has done, especially that he's had to start in such a key position for us in a, we have looked shaky at times over the last few seasons in defence, and for him to just come in and slot in, look like he's played there for years, I think is a testament to him. And we've got quite a few good options now, really, at centre back. I mean, I know we haven't seen Williams play there yet, but he came on and had a nice little cameo at the end. We've got somehow, even with all these injuries out, we've got options for once in defence, which I didn't think I'd be saying.
Yeah,
last season.
He's not trying to get in stuck in either, is he, Williams?
No, I quite like that.
He's straight in there, and he makes that tackle when it's needed. And I've been quite impressed with Williams. Sorry, Craig.
That's all right. Must only be in first team games because he wasn't that great in the reserves, in my opinion, yesterday. But it's just thankworthy. But to be fair, when you're playing on Notts County's under 14s, why would you want to get stuck in? More on that later on. I saw your dad, by the way, Cam, yesterday. He was there. He said.
He said he asked me if I was going, but I was working in Loughborough for the cricket, so couldn't go, unfortunately.
Well, there you go. Go back to more comments talking about squad rotation and things like that, and players making their position, their shirt, theirs. The Barry debate is there again. Simon says, interesting to see if Johnson gets straight back in or whether it will remain with Barry. Obviously, Adam Crump in the comments has gone Johnson by far. But Nick, Jordan Barry, like we were saying with the whole Aaron Lewis situation, we thought that Lewis would come in and Barry would go straight out. But Barry's really made that right back slot his own. And I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's because he's not been tested too much, but even when he has, I think he's defended superbly well. He does a lot of off-the-ball stuff. Like we saw it quite often, didn't we, on Saturday, where we'd lose the ball from an attacking set piece and Barry would stand up his man well, wouldn't get stuck in with a tackle, but he'd just shepherd him out and he'd allow enough time for us to get our shape back. And I think Barry's really holding on to that shirt. And who knows? I think he was obviously voted Player of the Month last month, and he's doing well again.
Yeah, I think at the end of last season, he became a bit of a bit part player, didn't he? And you could just see his sort of motivation didn't seem to be there. But this season, he's been, it's his shirt to lose for me at the minute. If you play that well and get Player of the Month, I don't think you should be booted out the first time someone comes back. But Johnson Johnson's a good player. He hasn't impressed me to the point where I'd lob Barry straight out there. But I understand, obviously, he is a right back, so probably should be playing there. But Barry was fantastic, I thought. He made some real covering sort of, like you say, weren't really tackles, but just covering movements that halted 2 or 3 of their attacks when, a Flint or a Brunt or whoever had given the ball away. his pace, and he got back in there. Like you say, stood them up, showed them away from goal, made a few last-ditch headers over our bar towards the end. I think with a confidence player like him, I think you've got to keep playing him. I don't think he's done anything to really warrant losing that spot. I know he's not a right back, obviously, but he isn't going to play up front, is he? So I think for me, it's his shirt to lose at the minute.
Jordan Bowery is not anything other than a Jordan Bowery. It's its own special category, and that's not a negative. That's not a slant. Jordan Bowery is Jordan Bowery, and
I did see somebody commented on the video, put why is the number 9 coming from behind the shot in the celebration for the Reed goal? And I did have to say he plays right back because I think there's a bit of confusion why our number 9 was so deep. But you have to explain with Mansfield that he is playing fullback.
We just have a very deep line forward. It's a reverse. It's a new tactic which somebody's created on Football Manager. It's the reverse deep line forward at right back. Roger in the comments says Bowery has been surprisingly good. Hats off to him for his versatility. Thomas adds, on paper, Bowery is perfect for League 2 at right back. Great size, good speed. Until his performance drops, leave him be. Simon adds, Bowery looks full of confidence and enjoying it. Roger also says Johnson will come back. Clough won't leave him on the bench, I think. And also adds that Pym made a couple of good saves on Saturday. Back to Lewis Brunt for a second. Mark says, watch Brunton under 21s at Leicester and looked like he had something then. Doing a cracking job so far. Can't wait to see him later in the season as Flint's experience rubs off even more. Roger says, Lewis Brunt, a lone player from Leicester City, is not a surprise. He's good at League 2 standard. He should be. Let's talk now, though, about a certain Mr. James Gale, who came back into the starting lineup on Saturday afternoon. He came on as a sub the previous week, and we all sort of said he completely changed the game, and had he come on earlier, may have even gone on to help us do even better in that game. But on Saturday, Cammy was straight back in, had a superb game for me, none more so than highlighted in 2 of the goals we scored. The first, of course, he set for Davies Keeler-Dunn with a lovely little cross from that right-hand side. Well weighted, well positioned, good little run. And then the George Maris goal, his movement at the back post just to drop off and draw 2 defenders with him, opened that gap for George Maris and allowed that pocket of space. He looks a superb player, does James Gale. And we're talking about Jordan Bowery keeping his shirt at right back. James Gale is keeping Will Swan out of that side.
He is, quite clearly. And obviously Clough said after the game that Will Swan is not quite clicked for him this season. I'm sure at some point it will, but until that point, is there any reason to drop Gale? No, exactly the same reason. There's no point. He's showing his worth, and obviously why Clough rated him so highly and why the hierarchy at the club bought him from Long Eaton. Obviously, they saw something. He spent time with the youth team and developed, and now he's all right. He's not scoring in the first team, but he's doing the extra bits that you don't necessarily see from a striker a lot of the time. A lot of the time, you of that sort of caliber, sort of like players, sort of like with their ability, you'd want them to be banging in goals left, right, centre, but he's doing all the other bits, and we've got the rest of the team to back it up to finish it off. And yeah, like you said, for the second goal, it doesn't matter if he's involved in the play or not. He has took away two defenders, and it's created that space. And I think in the past we've been a little bit guilty of not doing enough in the box, being a bit lazy, not getting the shot off, or being able to find that space. And Gale, just by his presence, not even doing anything, he's created that space. But it's just that intention of making that run which has created the space. And I hope that.
Go on.
Sorry.
No, carry on.
No, it's frustrating because quite clearly Clough didn't like giving youth a chance last season before, but James Gale 100% could have come into this side even earlier last season. And yes, we're seeing what he can do now, but think back and what he was able to do, especially in that Colchester game and the couple of games leading up to that. But if he throws him in even earlier, Does our season change last season, considering what we've seen from Gale so far? Just throwing it.
Ifs, buts and maybes, isn't it, on the past? But in terms of the here and now, someone earlier on, Nick, was mentioning about our strikers, not necessarily scoring goals, but that's not the way we necessarily play. We contribute from all over the pitch, and to say our strikers aren't scoring goals, yet we won 3-0 on Saturday and scored 3 really, really good goals. All right, one of them was an absolute worldie, which happens 1 in a million. But I think this comment from Thomas highlights it, and it's also James Gale looks so lively, fills the void of Reece Oates, unsettled defenders, always running in behind, and his work rate is second to none. Should start every game when Oates is out, especially away from home. Bit of a rough diamond, in my opinion. I think he's absolutely spot on. The contributions he makes, his running, his energy, his closing down, his press, suits the way we play like an absolute glove.
Yeah, he's for someone at 21 who's played 16 games to be, for me, one of the first names on the team sheet at the minute is a real achievement for him. I think we've just got to be careful who we pair him with, because I think sometimes you're playing with Akins and you get a little bit too similar because they both do the same thing. And they end up both running and there's no one in the middle. But I think that's why Keeler Dunn's been so successful, because he then becomes the man in the middle. For me, I don't care whether it's a striker or a midfielder who scores 6 goals in 4 or 5 games. I'm not bothered who that is, as long as someone's doing it. And we seem to be contributing from all over at the minute. In recent years, having that one big striker, we've tried a few, haven't we? Andy Cook and a few others, doesn't always seem to suit the way we play. And I think, like you say, at the minute, I think Gale really does contribute massively to how we play. And they didn't know how to play him. He just ran into them, he ran through them, he ran round them. He created so much space and room for Keeler Dunn around the edge of the box that it led to 2 goals, as we've just said. But credit to him, I think he's one of the first names of the team sheet for me at the minute. You got to protect him a little bit. Can't play him all the time.
Yeah.
But I think he's a confidence player again. I think he will only grow playing more and more and more. And if you've got a youngster like that, if you don't use him, you'll lose him. So we do need to play him. We just need to find somebody up with him who works with him, be it Oates, Swan, Akins, whoever. But I think once other people click around him, I think we've got a real player anyway. Gale, he looks brilliant.
Yeah, he is the whole round package, isn't he, Alan? He's physical, he's tall, he's good in the air, he runs well, he reads the game well, he can pick a pass. Obviously, he's a young player, so he will get some naive bookings. But I actually firmly believe that as much as we look to the likes of Reece Oates and Will Swan to get you 10 goals apiece, I think once James Gale gets one and gets off the mark up and running, the more he plays, the more he will grow in confidence, and you just got to keep watering that flower.
Well, it's got to be really confidence boosting for him when Nigel tells him, whether it's a Friday or a Saturday morning when they're playing, if you're keeping Will Swan out the side, you're doing something right, aren't you? He's doing really well, and it can only bode well in the future, because like last year, he scored a goal and then scored another one, and then he ended up 4 or 5 or whatever he had, and he scored a good goal against Colchester last year as well. And the one against Newport that he scored, it does look a really good prospect. But like I say, if he keeps playing, I can only see Swan being on the bench while he's playing as good as he's playing.
Yeah, I'm going to call it now as well. I think if Abdullah gets a little bit of a loan spell and some experience, I think Gale and Abdullah would be a handful of a pair, by the way. I think they're 2 very similar players, and I think the future is definitely bright on that one. Keep your comments coming in. Adam says, Gale's endeavour and effort, loved it. Stepping up, young man, well done. Mark said, I said last season, watch Gale come good this. Gale has something about him. Simon adds, Gale scored a good goal at Colchester, always gives 100%, proud to wear the shirt. Tim adds, James Gale keeps the opposing defence very, very busy. It makes us look that little bit more dangerous. Mansfield Matters OG alert. Simon in the comments. Simon Mercer, evening, mate. Good to see you again. Says, evening, fellas. Gale will be good for Mansfield. He looks good, but still young and learning his trade. What a goal from Aaron Lewis. If that's not goal of the season, I don't know what is. If it was Rashford or Kane, they'd be talking about it for years. Comments flooding about James Gale and attack as well. Paul says, last season Swan was like a Jack Russell, but since we signed him, not been the same. Not really had a run yet, has he, to really get his pace back. Roger says Gale, a very useful player to come on and do a bit of terrorising defenders. Personally, for me, I think it's the opposite. I think you start him, let him run defenders into the ground for 65 minutes, and then bring players like Will Swan and let them capitalise. Mark says Gale taking the chance with both hands whilst the injuries are there. It's his spot to lose at the moment. And Roger says Swan was supposed to be the star man, but it's not turned out that way up to yet. Let's talk about the 3 goals then, Cam, in a little bit more depth and look at those. Let's start with the obvious one. Obviously, Aaron Lewis's one will be talked over and over and over again. I guess it was one of those goals when you sort of you hear about it and you see it back where you think, oh, that's annoying. I wish I'd have been there to see it live.
That's very much how I felt. Fortunately, I paid the £10 to watch it on iFollow, so I didn't miss it. But I was sat at my grandma's watching it with my uncle, and it went in. I just looked at my uncle and I just said, I genuinely cannot believe I've just seen probably the best goal I've ever seen a Mansfield Town player score. The technique, the power, and it's hard to sum up because it's just one of those goals you just cannot just explain. It's just literal perfection. The way that it's just dipped under the crossbar and in front of the away fans as well. It's a dream goal for any sort of player to score that sort of goal, but in front of the away fans, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And Adam in the comments sums it up perfectly as well. DKD presses was the Aaron Lewis gifting the best assist ever. Yeah, it was that urgency, that closing down that we've been so used to since the start of the season, and that high press, and it's forced an error from the goalkeeper, and we've profited from it. And it is great work off the ball. And it's just a superb goal.
Controversial comment announcement coming after Alan's comment. That's a controversial comment coming after Alan's comment. Thank you.
I just thought it was nice if you heard his interview afterwards when he says, I was going to trap the ball firstly, then hit it. He says, but I was so, well, I won't say the word out. It was tired, in other words. And so I hit it straight away. But I thought that was a quality comment from him.
It was absolutely knackered.
Yeah.
Controversial comment time. Aaron Lewis's goal was not the best goal we scored on Saturday. The silence, I can feel the eyes piercing at me.
In Nigel's eyes, do you mean? He preferred the second one, didn't he? The team goal.
Who cares about Nigel? In my eyes, it wasn't the best goal we scored on Saturday. It wasn't even the second best goal we scored on Saturday. It was the third best goal we scored on Saturday. And do you know what? I'm not taking anything away from it, right? Because it was a superb strike. The technique, spot on. But there's a little bit of my brain which thinks, not because he did admit that he was initially thought of trapping it, like Alan said, but also it did feel a little bit like a tired dink over the top for someone to chase onto it. And he's just got lucky and it's got into the top corner and dipped and moved very, very well. And then the angles of all the cameras make it look tremendous. And then everyone jumps on board of it. But the best goal we scored on Saturday was George Maris's goal. The movement, the way we move the ball, the movement off the ball. James Gale, as I said earlier, ragging 2 defenders off to create that space. That was the best goal we scored for me on Saturday. Controversial comment over. Nick, feel free to tear me down in flames.
It's hard to choose between any 3 of them. I know Sky Sports do a top 5 goals and we got 2 of them. We probably should have had 3 of those 5, but they probably didn't feel like being that nice to us. But any of the 3, they were unbelievable. You're lucky if you get one of those goals a game, let alone to have 3 in the same game. I mean, from the side-on view we had of Lewis's, it didn't look as impressive. Obviously, it looked an amazing goal, but when you're behind it, the fans behind the goal got an unbelievable view of that. But the team goal is obviously what Clough's going to be all about, isn't he? Just shows the variety, I suppose. 3 different goal scorers, 3 different positions, involvements from everyone really, and it's just really well-worked goals, which we don't normally score. If you said, how do Stags normally score? We seem to be scoring more and more of those sort of team goals. If you look at the goals we score these days, there's a hell of a lot of good build-up in and around the box, making the right decision, which has been our letdown last season. But yeah, it'd be hard to pick. Lewis's goal is always going to get the view, so to speak, but you could probably argue all three. I mean, the overhead kick, the view from behind the goal, from the away end, they had a few random weird vloggers around that I saw videos of on YouTube. And some of the videos they got of the overhead kick was unbelievable. It was right in the top corner.
Imagine watching the game
pick any of that. To imagine scoring an overhead kick and it being the third least least impressive goal of the game.
You'd be gutted, wouldn't you?
You'd be gutted. Normally there'd been videos of that, but didn't even get a mention, did it? That one, an overhead kick from the edge of the box in the top corner.
Let's be honest. Aaron Lewis has swung at fresh air and he's hit the ball, and luckily for him, one moment it flew in the top corner.
No, I'm not having that.
I'm
not having that.
No.
DKD's one, to be fair, lovely crossing, and then the movement to swivel to get it up in the air to get the connection. Fair play. Tim in the comments says, we have played very well so far this season, but do you feel that we have had a real test? We'll be interested to see how we perform against other promotion candidates. Alan, you're always the voice of positivity on this podcast, so I'll let you take that one first.
Yeah, I don't think we'll have a problem. I felt really confident on Saturday against Accrington. That's why I said the 2-0 scoreline. I weren't far off. But I can't see us having a problem at this present time. The time will come when, we have that little dip in form where we maybe lose one or not put the chances away. But like Leyton Orient last season, like Forest Green the season before, there's always one team that seems to do quite well, and keeps the run going. And why can't it be Mansfield for a change? I'd love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul in the comments says pure class volley, not just a team goal. Roger says he noticed the keeper out of his position and hit it, swerved into the corner, so no chance the keeper save. Look on keeper's face was priceless. Goal of the season, yes. All three goals were brilliant. End of, says Tim. Steve says, I too think DKD's goal was slightly the best of the three. Simon says Newport were gutted to see Lewis leave. Can certainly see why he's been absolute class. Roger says you don't often see Stags score three like that in a game. Still think Sheffield Wednesday's 30-plus passes take some beating as well. It's not bad when debating which goal is the goal of the season. And lots more comments coming in as well. One question we have had in, Cam, is that about Callum McDonald. Thomas asks, thoughts on Callum McDonald? Really impressed. Think McLaughlin will struggle to get his place back as much as I love him. I actually think I'd agree with that. I think McLaughlin will actually be third in line for that left-back spot because Bailey Cargill is also knocking on the door because he's superb cover at left-back. And with Brunt playing as well as he is, that's the more likely place that Cargill will get back in.
Oh, isn't it good having all these little issues of trying to pick who do we want in what position? Jeez, think back.
Should be an announcement for more than one choice at left back. That's an announcement.
I know.
Yeah, we've not had that for about 5 years.
It's a surprise.
I know.
I can't overuse the
No,
sound.
don't do that.
I mean, I sort of overused it before we even came live, so I'm not going to do that. Seriously though, thoughts on Callum McDonald, Nick?
Yeah, I think he's been brilliant. I think we saw him at Alfreton first, and I thought, he scored that great goal. I know it's only Alfreton, but I thought he looks quite tough, doesn't he? He looks a bit of a tough nut. He does fly into tackles from like 30 yards away sometimes, which doesn't help. But he's just tough. I want to play against him as a winger. I'd hate to come up against him because he's just really tough. He's robust. He bounces off things. He wins headers. Good on the ball. Pace up and down. Got a good delivery. I think it's been a really good signing. I don't know if anyone expects him to start every week, but certainly has got the shirt just like everyone in the 11 has at the minute. And I think you'd find it difficult to prize it off him. I don't think McLaughlin has come back and suddenly find himself in the team.
I think he could take a note out of McLaughlin's book and McLaughlin bring him to one side to show him how to take a free kick, though.
Yeah, he can't. No, that's
not
in his repertoire at the minute. I'll give you that.
Yeah,
definitely not.
It's not in anyone's repertoire at the minute, is it? Free kicks or corners. We can't seem to take either.
I know. For all of this beautiful play that we're having, Cam, and for all this positivity which is bleeding out of us, there's always one thing missing, isn't it? It's like we want to buy the best thing out on the market, but instead of buying it from the well-known retailer, the one whose price bracket is a little bit higher, we're going for the cheap option sometimes. And our set pieces, oh my God, the amount of goals we could score if we could actually take a decent free kick or corner. Well, we'd be talking double figures every game.
We would. We never have a decent set piece taker. You've got McLaughlin who can pull off every now and again. Lewis Reed was supposed to come in and be a decent set piece taker. Yet to see that. But you know what? It's good to be talking about these things, because the fact that the players, first and foremost, have got the confidence to shoot from 30 yards from a free kick is good. Last thing you want is to be just dinking the ball to the far post and all right, Aiden Flint's decent in the air, but just take it on every now and again. I love Adam's comment in the comments. Obviously, Hartigan, the free kick expert, was he though? Was he really?
It came with that mantle.
Yeah, I'm not going to rant about it, but there you go. Right, don't go anywhere. Keep your comments flooding in. Have your say on your team. Anything you want to talk about Mansfield Town-wise. If you've got a question that you want to put to all four of us, get it in the comments now. If you've got an opinion on a player or a style of play or anything Mansfield Town related, feel free to get it in the comments now and have your say on your team. You're listening to the Mansfield Matters podcast. It's the show for the fans, by the fans, and we're proud to be part of the talkSPORT fan network. Don't go anywhere. It's the show for the fans, by the fans. This is the Mansfield Matters podcast. Thanks so much for joining us again this evening here on the Mansfield Matters podcast. Right, we're going to stay with Accrington for just a minute before we talk all things reserves. And that, Nick, is to talk about their stadia. Now, some may be glad Clive is not with us this evening, because I feel like he would have a rant for about 4 hours on this topic. I might do it for him, and I'm sure this discussion will come up again in future when things are a little bit more quiet. But Accrington, over the last 6-7 years or so, have progressed as a club. They've obviously had a long stint in League One, came down at the end of last season. But prior to that, their stadium was not one of the greatest to visit. I remember as a Stags fan years ago going there and standing on that open terrace, getting absolutely soaked to the bone, the game getting abandoned at half-time because the pitch was underwater. You have to say, though, that the improvements they've made to that stadium, absolutely second to none. And if you want a blueprint to base any potential one-course stadium developments on, Nick, look no further than Accrington Stanley.
Yeah, it's my first visit. I've not been before. And amazingly, my dad, even though he's been to most grounds in the country, hadn't been either. So it's a bit of a new one for us. But the two things that stood out for me, and the one thing, and it's a really simple thing, is the back of the away stand where we were sitting had multiple openings to buy and consume goods. It had multiple barriers to have multiple smaller queues rather than one massive queue. And then set back 10 yards, and it had an open area for smoking, for standing, for eating, for drinking, and it kept everyone away from all the exits and entrances, which the Quarry Lane end does not have, because everyone congregates in the one and only concourse. So, and we've got the same amount of room that they've got. You just lose a few car park spaces, God forbid, and you could set up the same thing. It was covered, it allowed people to stand and talk and chat. Nowhere was busy, yet there was 1,000 fans trying to get a drink because it was red hot, but it was all managed really well. And I think we could learn a hell of a lot from that sort of open area at the back. That was great. And the second one was the stand opposite us. The main stand had 10 rows of seating and then a whole row of boxes at the back. And it had less footprint than the Bishop Street does. And I think was a real good. I know people have said they might want standing, which is fine, but that as an option for 6-7 rows of seats. And then the Stags to have the option of selling boxes the full entire length of the pitch, for me, was a really good sort of blueprint for what we could do with that little poxy side we've got. But I certainly think things like improve, like the way they manage the the half-time refreshments was miles superior to what we offer at the back of the Quarry Lane.
Yeah, from a ginger who dies in the sun, Accrington Stanley's catering staff, thank you very much. Maybe next time get more water, because that the bottle of Coke in the stuff, I didn't like that. I didn't finish that. I wasted money on it, but it was cold, refreshing. It didn't take long to get served, and a ginger in the sunshine is never a good thing. Like Nick said, we did manage to get the one row of sort of semi-shade. Although to that fan who came up to us 2 minutes before kick-off and said, "You're in my seat, mate. Come on, just do one. Just look at what's there. Ginger, sunshine, protect all gingers." I mean, look at the guy that was on first aid duty, Nick. He
needed protecting at all costs. He was lathered by the end.
Absolutely,
he was red. He was bright red, literally.
And not just his hair. Also, on a little side note as well, best wishes to the Accrington Stanley fan who took the ball full in the face right on towards the end, and well done from both medical teams to reacting so quickly to that. Right, keep your comments, your questions, your opinions coming in. Simon says, we seem to get excited when we score, when we get a corner, and we aren't very good, and that's probably the only downfall we have. The best I've seen is Liam Lawrence in for Reece Day, and that's going back some as well. Yeah, absolutely remember those times. I remember the conference as well, and Luke Jones always used to pop up from a corner and score. John Dempster as well back in the day. Roger says, why does Oates keep getting injured? He seems a permanent sick-note boy. Mark, in response to Accrington, says, great pies. And then a serious question, Alan, from Simon, who asks, do you think the new rules punishing slow play, player feigning injury is helping out the flowing games? What's your opinion on those new rulings?
Quite possible, because you see quite a few minutes at the end of the first half, and sometimes you don't notice it so much, and I think it's also helped with the referees. You don't seem to. Especially on this channel, Mansfield Matters channel, you don't hear people moaning about referees quite so much this year, because they seem to be, what we would have thought there's a foul or whatever. They're letting games flow, and I think it's a good point what Simon makes. Yes, I think it probably is helpful, towards how we're doing at this present time.
I think it certainly had an impact, Cam, on the way we play. That whole punishing slow play, it will stop teams like Sutton wasting time, and that's no disrespect to Sutton. It's just the way that they've played and why they've been successful, and perhaps why they're not having the luck which they've had in the previous 2 seasons. They've had a bit of a difficult start, and for me, Cam, with the players we've got and the quality we've got, I love the fact that we can get the hand on the ball, play it quickly, and not stop that clock. Keep playing, keep flowing, because the more we build momentum, the better we are.
We are. And it is frustrating when you do have these spells in games where it's not quite as quick. And I think Bradford were quite guilty of it. But I also feel like that Bradford didn't have much of an answer to what we were throwing at them at that point. And it's probably the only game where I'd say we've been wasteful. But clearly we're a side full of confidence at the moment, and like you said, if we get the ball on the floor and get it going, and there's no problem. We've got the confidence, we've got the ability in the players, and we've got the tactics to match it all. And it's nice to be in a position where we've got, all right, we've still got players out injured, but we've got a decent squad that can play a good standard of football, and we're playing teams off the park week in, week out, and to do this at League Two is very impressive. All right, we spent an absolute bag to get to this point, but we'll take it, considering what we were going through previously under Graham Coughlin and John Dempster, and insert all the manager here.
That's almost true. Nick, I think the only thing for me is the time thing. I think the referees have got to be a little bit more. They've got to be given a little bit more flexibility, I think, when it comes to that. Obviously, I like the fact that when teams are wasting time, they're adding that on. But you look at Accrington on Saturday. Obviously, the gentleman takes the ball to the face, and you wish him all the best, like we said. But obviously, all that time got added on. We were 3-0 up. It was sweltering hot. We all wanted to go home. Come on, just. Were they ever going to get back in the game at that point? I mean, to be fair,
I don't think they were. No.
Well,
They said that in the comments. They go on, presenters. They said that in the comments. Is there any need for all this time added on there?
I think Swan could have made it 4, couldn't he? He ran through on goal and should have scored.
Good save, to be fair.
I think the one thing for me that's missing that still bugs me is the punishment for time wasted. Yeah. They didn't need to come up with this really convoluted add time on, just book them. And if they do it again, book them again, and then they'll be gone. That's it. Because the thing with Mansfield is we'll get a game where a team time wastes all. We'll be 1-0 up, and they'll add on 15 minutes. Who does that benefit? It doesn't benefit Mansfield, does it? Because we've got to go on for another 10, 15 minutes messing about trying to hold on to a 1-goal lead. We haven't wasted the time. So I don't know. For me, it's just about punishment. The goalkeeper messing around with a goal kick. If you book him once, he literally can't do it again. It's as simple as that. But they don't. They'll say, "Oh, we're adding the time on." Just book them, and stick to your normal amount of time added on, and just book the players. If a player goes off injured and then rolls back on the pitch, book him. If they mess about with free kicks, throw-ins, whatever it is, they would soon stop. Once players start getting sent off, they'd soon stop. But then you add on these 15 minutes, and with our record in injury time, I'd rather not have 10 minutes added on. I'd rather just finish on like 93. We don't want 50. Like at Crewe, that 14 minutes or whatever it was at the end, or 9 minutes that we ended up playing, was excruciating. Despite us not wasted a second of it, we had to somehow hold on with 10 men for another 9 minutes. But it's my rant for the day anyway.
Now, this is a comment that I certainly agree with from Paul, Cam. If they waste time, do what rugby does, sin bin. I'd love to see a sin bin in football. Yeah. I think really, really have a great impact on tactics and the way teams approach it. And I think as well, you see so many silly yellow cards and things like that. Imagine if a keeper wastes time, right, and picks up essentially 2 yellow cards. It would be a silly sending off, but wasting time, putting a goalkeeper in a sin bin for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, it would completely change the complexity of the game, because then the management would be, well, what do I do? Do I take an outfield player off to put somebody else in goal, or do I put an outfielder in goal for 10 minutes? It would completely change the game. And from an entertainment point of view, it'd be cracking.
It wouldn't work.
It would work. Listen, it's better than we've had great ideas on this podcast before. I'm thinking the COVID Cup. This is next level. Come on.
Don't you dare. No. That. The best idea we've ever had. So don't. Honestly,
we've just bettered it.
No, we haven't. Moving on. I think there is more to be done. For example, in kids football and the women's game, you can get sin bin 40 cents. Is it used? Is it balls? Yeah, exactly that one. It's frustrating because they bring this rule in, and the amount of times that, to be honest, we complained about the state of officiating in the Football League. Come down to the FA Women's National League Northern Premier Division. That's a mouthful. I genuinely think they get the referees off of Sutton Lawn on a Saturday morning. Genuinely so bad. But they bring these rules in to try and help officials, and they don't use them. If a manager or a player starts giving you some lip, book them for dissent, and they have to go off for, I think it's 8 minutes. But it just doesn't get used. I think I've maybe seen it used 2-3 times. But it's never been in game that I've covered. It's always been in games that I've seen elsewhere in the league. It just doesn't get used enough, and it's just a waste of time. So we try and help the officials, and it doesn't work. So if it doesn't work at this level, then I'm not being funny. Professional football players that are being paid thousands of pounds a week it's not going to work.
I think one thing that I have noticed worked is the one person up in the touch in the dugout area, the sort of managers area, and they're only allowed one to be sort of gesticulating randomly at a time. I think I've noticed that seems to work. There hasn't really been any, fracas on the side of the pitch, from the Premier League down to Mansfield. I haven't seen a lot. That seems to have helped a lot, actually, because you only got one stood up. That's made a massive difference, I've noticed.
That's one from across everything. We've got that in our divisions, and it works.
Yeah,
it does help.
Definitely. It definitely works.
I'd be interested. I'd love to see us play Stevenage to see how that worked with Big Stephen Dodge. Right, moving on, because we are running out of time, and I said we were going to talk Central League, and I am determined to talk Central League, because I did not go out yesterday just to get out of the house, basically, but to not talk about it. Central League Cup against Notts County. Very, very young side from Notts County was fielded. They had a Papa John's game the night before, so that would have impacted on that selection a little bit. In terms of first teamers, George Williams and Bailey Cargill both got 45 minutes apiece. Williams played at right back. Did all right, didn't get stuck in too much and did get turned a few times from some of the Notts County kids. But on the attack, did well, put some dangerous balls in. O'Toole played for around 70-75 minutes and then predictably got injured. He played CDM for the first half and then slotted into centre-back for the second half. So again, that trying to explain to someone why a number 10, wearing a number 10 shirt, was playing centre-back. Interesting. George Cooper played as well, captained the side, very, very solid, did really, really well. Again, looks a superb prospect for the future. We need to get him a loan move, though, and we need to get him a loan move to the National League to get some real competitive football under his belt. There was a trialist of sorts, Lachlan, who people are talking about on social media, played well on the left-hand side, some good movement. But for me, Alan, I was really impressed with some of the younger prospects coming through. In previous years, we've only really had one or two names to throw into the mix, but we have got a real good academy set up now. Chop at left back, I was impressed with him. Flanagan in the middle scored a really, really good goal. We've spoken about a lot on the podcast. And then young Charlie Carter, I think it is, played really well in midfield. We've got an abundance of talent in there, and having this Central League is giving them the opportunity to play more and to get those minutes with those more established first teamers as well. It only bodes well for the future, doesn't it?
I'm going to say, when it was the pressing, I saw the highlights on it was either, I think it was Facebook today that it was on. Saw all the goals, and Abdullah was. Sorry about that. Libby's just saying she likes Abdullah, but it was good pressing, wasn't it? That finally took it off the keeper and put it into the net. And he, like you said, he does look a good prospect.
Yeah, it's really good to have so many exciting players coming through, Nick. And who knows, we may see some of them get involved in the Papa John's trophy in the coming weeks. Games coming thick and fast. And the one thing we don't want to do, I'll always rant about it, that I think we should be doing well in that competition. But the one thing Nigel Clough will not want to do is surrender this league form that we're on.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see some play. I haven't seen many of them other than the ones who've played in the first team. But it's nice that there's a pathway now, and I think those players will be buoyed seeing James Gale playing week in, week out. I think that will make them a bit quicker in training and make them want to put in a little bit more effort. If you don't think there's a pathway to the first team, you're not going to try your hardest. I don't care what anybody says. But if you think there's a real chance that if you play well, you could be playing in front of 8,000 fans at Field Mill, you're going to want to put the effort in, aren't you? You're going to want to try hard. You're going to want to better yourself, and having people like James Gale will help. I think having players like when Jason Law was here and other young players seeing how good he was technically and wasn't playing, I think that would have had the opposite effect. They'd have gone, what's the point? What's the point of me putting these hard yards in training day in, day out to make myself better if I'm never going to make it regardless? But having James and Abdullah around the first team can only, for me, be a positive thing. And the young goalkeepers warming up with the first team, things like that, I think that can only help. And I think the club are very vocal now on social media. Adam Collin bigs up the goalkeepers quite a lot. And there's a lot more good press around with Steve Chetland, whatever the guys who've joined us. there's a lot more press around the young players now, and I think there'd be quite a lot of pressure for whoever the Mansfield manager is to have young Mansfield players in the team, and rightly so. I think there should always be ideally at least one player in the 11 that's come through the ranks somewhere. We've always had that. It's just recently it sort of fell away, but real motivation seeing Gale playing week in, week out, I think.
Absolutely right. We are an hour into the podcast, which means one thing and one thing only. So will they win, lose or draw? And what will be the score? It's the guessing game that brings you zero fame, but to be the best, you must outguess the rest. So will they win, lose or draw? And what will be the score? In the League or Cup, you just make it up, because they're just works of fictions. It's podcast predictions. Will they win, lose or draw? Colchester United is the place where we go on Saturday afternoon. How will the Stags fare? Right, let's start with the man who I can tell you is currently top of the Mansfield Matters group, and that's Aaron Wilson. Colchester prediction, please.
Colchester 0, Mansfield Town 2. Man of the match, Aaron Lewis.
Nick, I'm going to come to you next. You predicted a draw last weekend. Are you going to go for the same, or are you backing us to win?
I'm going to have to go Stags win, aren't I? 2-1 Stags and man of the match, Mr. Keeler Dunn.
Oh, DKD. Cam.
Because it's my friend's side, I'm going to have to back us. 4-0 Stags win.
Oh,
wow.
DKD, man of the match.
Little announcement. Cam doesn't have any other friends than us in this group, so he's obviously got an imaginary friend who, for some reason, is a Colchester fan. I will also go with a Stags win. I'm going to go for a 3-1 win. I think the goals are going to keep coming. And James Gale will be the Stags man of the match when he bags a hat-trick. You heard it here first, folks. Yeah. Bold predictions made by me. As always, if you want to get involved and play along with podcast predictions, you can do so by using the link in the description. And you must do what, Captain Bolton?
Get your prediction in an hour and 1 minute before kickoff.
That's done.
No later than that. Let's see what Clive's is very, very quickly. 2-0 Stags win. And he's gone for DKD as man of the match. As ever, get involved with podcast predictions via the link in the description. Like Cam says, you must do it no later than 1 hour and 1 minute before kickoff on Saturday. And Nick, because you've done it on here, you don't have to do it. I'll do it for us, so you won't forget this week. It's just Nathan that has to forget. So that's it. Podcast predictions. Get involved via the link in the description and have your say on your team in the guessing game that brings you zero fame.
Funky music, isn't it? Alan's liking it anyway.
Yeah. Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of the show. Thank you very much for getting involved with the Mansfield Matters podcast tonight. Really do appreciate your support as ever on the show. For the fans, by the fans. Why? Because Mansfield always matters. Well, that's all we've got time for on tonight's show. My thanks, as always, to the Mansfield Matters podcast panel, and of course to you guys at home for getting involved in the live feed and for listening as well. Don't forget to play along with podcast predictions. The link that you need is in the description, and a reminder that you must do it no later than 1 hour and 1 minute before kickoff on Saturday afternoon as the Stags head for Colchester. It was the final game of last season where the Stags needed just one goal to get into the playoffs. They didn't manage to do it, but can they get at least one goal more than the opposition this Saturday to continue their unbeaten run. We'll talk all about it on next week's show. Make sure you follow us on all things social media to find out when we're next going to be live. For now, though, my thanks to Cam, my thanks to Alan, and to Nick of Mansfield Town Shirts fame as well for getting involved on tonight's show, and to you guys for listening at home. Can we continue the unbeaten run? Join us next week to find out why. Because Mansfield always matters. Good night.